From the Bent Pixel Studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Phone Booth Fighting with myself, Richard Hunter, and you.
I'm Frank Mayer.
Happy to be with you once again. We got fights to talk about. We got other stuff to talk about. How was your week, Frank?
It's been good so far. Hung out with the kids, children.
Yeah. I happened to have occasion to attend the wrestling practice at one of your kids' ritzy private schools. I was shocked to see that the assistant wrestling coach was wearing a Metallica t-shirt. When I was in high school, I was wearing the Metallica t-shirt. Now the coach is wearing the Metallica t-shirt.
That's how things are aging.
Gotten old. That's
I meant
right.
to ask you, too, actually, question right off the bat, I'm glad I remembered. Mm-hmm. Jennifer told me to ask you, because she just saw Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
She's like, ask Richard if he ever got to see Queen live.
No. Queen is one of the few bands from that era that I missed out on. They weren't before my time, but they were kind of, I didn't have a lot of window to see them.
They were probably done touring, like in the late 80s?
Yeah, like there were probably a couple of tours in the 80s that I could have caught, but it would have been more like the early 80s. And I was going to concerts, but Mom was having to drive me and stuff like that, so I kind of just missed it, unfortunately.
That dude was talented, man.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Freddie Mercury, to me, and to a lot of people, is arguably the greatest front man who's ever existed.
I have to say that, and obviously, I'm a fucking white belt in this shit. And after I watched the movie, I started downloading all kinds of Queen songs. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked at how many of them I already fucking knew. Because you know me, I'm a Highlander dork. I like Highlander. Mm-hmm. I never knew that a couple of the songs there are from Queen. I was like tripping out. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. Like my wife's like, you know this song? I'm like, well, I know the fucking movie.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they are one of those bands. Incredibly talented band. They're still out there. The drummer, Roger Taylor, and the guitar player, Brian May, are still performing. The singer now is Adam Lambert, who was the guy that was on American Idol a number of years ago.
The guy that came out gay, and I was like, no shit, Sherlock.
Exactly. which is a perfect. It's perfect that he took Freddie Mercury's spot, because that was the case with Freddie Mercury. Everybody pretty much knew.
Yeah, there was a scene in the movie. Have you seen the movie?
Oh yeah.
I like that scene where he goes up to his girl, which was kind of like a really sweet kind of romance between the girl. It was funny because Mrs. Mir was like, I wish that was like that. Like, had you been off with with other people, and then no matter what, I was the one. I'm all. Somehow I don't think you would find it that sweet if you were. No, rethink what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
But when he said that, he goes, okay, I have to admit to you that I'm bisexual. She goes, I don't think you're bisexual.
Yeah.
You're gay.
Yeah. And that's a true story. That was his wife, and even though
he left everything to her too, right?
Yeah. They basically stayed best friends. So the movie was very well done. It was in the interest of Hollywood, certain things in the timeline were moved around a little bit, but that basically tells you the story of that band. And I remember watching Live Aid as a kid live when it happened. That was a big deal when it happened, that concert, because they did one concert here, and they did one concert in London.
Was that the one where they get 20 minutes each band?
Yeah, yeah. And they were having simultaneous concerts going on. One in London, and the one over here was it in D.C.? Philadelphia. I'm trying to remember what American. Look that up, Mikey. I can't remember what American city they used, but I was a little kid, but I watched it live, and I remember because Led Zeppelin reunited over on the British version of it. Black Sabbath played over there, and then another thing that happened was Phil Collins played at one show, and then got on a Concorde and flew Philadelphia, thank you, and then got on a Concorde and flew to the other one and made it before the concert ended to play on that one.
Oh, that's cool.
So he actually played on both. But yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody, they did an excellent job with that. And there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of good band stories like that have not yet been made into movies for whatever reason. And I think now, because of the success, that got nominated for Best Picture. And so I think because of the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, you're going to see some other, films like that. Somebody should make the Led Zeppelin story. There's never been a really proper, Jimi Hendrix story or Janis Joplin story. One that's coming to Netflix next month is the Motley Crue movie. and they the band is very involved in doing that. So that's going to be very similar to the way Queen was involved in doing Bohemian Rhapsody. Motley Crue is doing a Netflix original movie that's going to be based on their autobiography, The Dirt. And boy, that movie, I mean, the book certainly, and I'm sure it'll be the movie will adhere to it closely. That is like the quintessential 80s hair metal debauchery that went on with Motley Crue. So that should be a good one. All right, well, good. Well, you got to see Bohemian Rhapsody. I went to Disneyland. It was my Jennifer's birthday, so we went and celebrated at Disneyland, which is interesting. We've now been to Disney enough times that we're running out of firsts to have, as far as like, you know, we're hitting all the rides, we're doing a lot of the experiences, but we had our first heavy rain to deal with, and to the point that it was shutting down a lot of the outdoor rides and things like that. And we actually got stuck on the Incredicoaster, which I texted you the video of us stuck on. Boy, Jennifer was not happy about that situation, getting stuck on that roller coaster. I asked you if it had happened to you before. You said you've been stuck on a few rides.
Yeah, the only one that was kind of like a big roller coaster we got stuck on one time, which was kind of funny, was the Matterhorn. And when we got stuck, it was raining out, and we got stuck where it was like halfway through one of the tunnels. So half of the cart was outside and the rest was in. And Cage was stuck in the so he's just sitting there getting rained on. And you can't get out till they come up and get you. You know what I mean?
That's funny.
So, but then it was kind of cool because once they got us out, we got to walk through Matterhorn, and you got to see. You know how they say there's a basketball court up there?
Yeah,
there is, but it's not what you're thinking. It's like like basically someone in their warehouse in the back of their garage put a rim up, and it's like not even regulation, and you know, it's not even a full half court, you know, and there's equipment around, and like, there's a rim. Basically it's someone put a rim up in their basketball.
Why do they have extra space in there?
Just because the way it was built. You know, there was like, you know, an empty area. So it looked like it was probably originally meant for like a storage area. And some of the engineers just cleared it out and put a hoop up there.
Okay, because the Matterhorn is one of the oldest rides there. I think it's like I don't know if it's an original ride but it was right close to the beginning of like Walt Disney himself, I think, designed it or oversaw it, or, you know, all that kind of thing. Well, we it was raining on us so much that we got on the Incredicoaster. At one point, we did get to ride it a couple times, but one time it started pouring rain while we were on it, and the thing goes so fast, the rain is just hammering you in the face.
I can imagine,
it's like getting pelted in the face. Then we just ended up riding Guardians of the Galaxy like 7 times because it was an indoor ride, and all the lines were super short. Like, people didn't come out for the rain and stuff that much. So anyway,
a lot of the ones when you get we've been stuck in, like in Fantasyland. It's usually just a malfunction. It happens several times a day there. And then, but when you got to get out, they turn all the lights on because they don't want anybody to trip. So they start from the very back. And they walk you through, and seeing, like, you know, like, what was it, Pinocchio's Adventure, whatever the ride's called. You realize when the lights are on, it's not as elaborate. You know, like a lot of it's the spray paint glows a certain way in the light. So it makes it look a certain way. But once you flip the lights on, you're like, shit, man, people could make this. You know, this is something that you see at your local haunted museum, you know?
I'll tell you.
It's like movie props.
You
ever seen, a friend of mine, every year, his company does all the commercials for the CW. So when the actors go like, "You're watching CW channel 58 Chicago," they do like all that once a year, like every channel. And I was working on it once, and they do all the superhero shows, CW, like the Flash and the Arrow. I'm like, oh, cool. See all the props. I'm like, oh, these are kind of shitty.
I'll tell you where that happened to us too. Is we got stuck in Indiana Jones, and the lights came on in that thing. And there was a lot of that, like the way they paint it. You know, once all the lights come on, it's not as elaborate looking. But that one was weird because we got stuck on it for a while, and then when it came back on, it was kind of half-ass working. Like, we kind of limped into the station, and if anything was a little disconcerting, it was that, because it had this feel like, even though you know it's not the case, in your subconscious, you're kind of like, man, this thing might take on a mind of its own, because it's kind of, the audio's kind of, you know, like it feels like you're the riding on the broken ride was almost scarier than it was scarier than getting stuck. You know what I mean? Because you're like, I mean, I know it's on a track, but you're like, I don't know.
I never thought about that, because on the other ones, you get off and they have you walk.
Yeah.
So I guess I never went through my brain what happens on the roller coasters that
it's
For example, like the Incredicoaster.
Yeah.
There's no rail on the side. There's no walkway. So how do you?
Yeah,
you got to force it through. Huh?
It's kind of like they just tow you in. Well, when it got stuck one time before in the Incredicoaster, we kind of, we got into the station, but it was obviously much slower than it was supposed to be. So they just have some kind of ability to do that. That's my favorite photo of us on the Incredicoaster is, because normally they take those pictures of you and your mouth is wide open, you have all these crazy looks. And that's the case because Jennifer, she has to, she has a hard time not closing her eyes and stuff like that on the ride. So we always get a funny picture. But when we had to limp into the station that one time, her face is just blank, just like.
Does she have a fear of enclosed areas or just?
No, I think it was just getting stuck. And it's not like you get stuck like that one has a loop. You can't get stuck hanging upside down because the force, even without, if the ride had no power, you would still go through the loop. You're not going to get stuck directly hanging upside down.
You see though that
I think
I've seen
that's the
pictures
fear.
of people stuck in rides upside down.
Really? I figured that couldn't
I don't know
happen.
that one specifically, but
Yeah.
I've seen before roller coasters where you hear about people being stuck
Is that
upside.
right?
Yeah,
Maybe I'm wrong. I didn't think that could happen. I thought that because of the momentum, once you're hitting that loop, that there would be enough
I think
to
it
go
depends
through
on the
it.
mechanism and on how it's. We'd have to talk to an engineer.
Yeah,
that builds
maybe
roller
so.
coasters, but because a lot of times it's a cable on a machine, and if that thing jams, it's not the momentum. I don't know. But I've seen pictures or I've heard stories of people stuck.
Yeah.
For some time upside down.
Yeah, we.
You got anything there for us, Mike?
I'm looking at it. The first thing on Google says that you'd roll through, or you'd go up and then kind of like come back
Not
down,
all the way
or you
over,
wouldn't
right, yeah.
loop all the way through.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at an article now. I'm going to see if it's real or
Boy,
not.
can you imagine? All right, can you imagine it loses power and you're coming into the loop and you're not going to go all the way over, but in your mind you're thinking, is this thing going to go all the way over? Like right before it loses the momentum. Now, the one thing that was a little nerve-wracking is I noticed that the way they get us out of the Incredicoaster, because it has those bars that come down over your shoulders, is the person just gets on the back of the car and steps on this release, like this piece of metal. They just step on it and the thing opens.
Oh.
And I was like, well, not that there's some random person's going to fall out of the sky and step on the thing, but still, is it that easy? I don't know.
Tyler
Yeah.
one time came with us. I think it was
Large man of size.
What was it? The American Park or American Adventures?
Mm-hmm.
One of the main big roller coaster parks somewhere in California. And he went to get on it. The whole time he's complaining. He's like, man, I'm going to feel stupid because, you know what I mean? Like, I'm big, and it's California. Like, if this was back in Jersey or back East Coast, they're used to dealing with big people, you know what I mean? But, like, here, all these fucking vegans and shit, you know what I mean? And so, sure enough, he goes to get on one of them, and it won't latch down.
Oh.
So I'm sitting there like, fuck this, I have it. So I jumped up off of my seat and walked through the middle of it and then stepped on it and basically, like, forced it down.
Oh.
Jammed it in. I'm like, you're good. And ran back to my seat. I'm like, you're safe. He's like, I'm like, you might not be able to make it to the end before you pass out, but you're good.
I guess they just don't have a problem with random park goers volunteering to help out with the.
I think they just saw it
rides.
as just a situation they didn't have to deal with.
Yeah, maybe so.
Somebody making minimum wage looking over and going, fuck, he got it. It's on him now.
So anyway, that's been our week recap. Now this coming weekend, we've got big fights dealing. UFC 234 goes down in Australia. The middleweight title is on the line. Robert Whitaker will be defending against Kelvin Gastelum. Now this is an interesting matchup. Whitaker is coming off of a unanimous decision victory over Yoel Romero, the second of two. Actually, this last one was a split decision. The one before that was a unanimous decision, but two decision victories over Yoel Romero. Those have been his last two fights. And then Kelvin Gastelum is coming off of a split decision win over Jacare Sousa. He himself is on a two-fight winning streak, having defeated Michael Bisping via KO right before that. So Whitaker is about a 2.5 to 1 favorite in this fight, and that's nothing new to Gastelum. Gastelum has been an underdog in some big fights before, but as I thought through this, boy, we've we've underestimated Kelvin Gastelum at our peril in the past, and this is a guy who's got wrestling ability to the point that it seems to me he might be able to rely on that in a way that maybe he hasn't had to so much in his previous fights as a counter to Whitaker. But Whitaker's wrestling is improving as well. I don't know. I go back and forth on this fight. You have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm slightly pulling for Gastelum.
Mm-hmm.
Reason being is because, I think Gastelum has had a difficult time when he fights some of the bigger guys up in middleweight. Like, Chris Weidman is a good size middleweight, and that's the last guy he lost to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Whitaker does well because he is a small middleweight. He's a guy that used to make welterweight. So I think that because of the wrestling and the hands of Kelvin Gastelum, that I think that he's going to be able to take down. I think he's more of a threat to take down Whitaker than even Yoel was, even though Yoel is obviously an international superstar at wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
His stand-up isn't well put together. I mean, he has one punch KO power, but it's not hard to see what he's doing. They're very telegraphed shots. They're one at a time most of the time. He throws one powerful shot and then might shoot on you. Where Kelvin Gastelum is actually a pretty avid boxer. He throws good combinations and can shoot shots off of that. So I think he's much more put together as a skill set of a mixed martial artist. So I think that even though his wrestling, on a wrestling per wrestling basis is nowhere near what Yoel is, I think he'll be able to take down Whitaker with more ease than actually Yoel was able to. And once he gets him down, Yoel Romero, and I think that's even why I picked Whitaker to beat him. I think Yoel, no matter what, is just a high-octane athlete that fades.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't ever see him being a great 5-round fighter. Not because he doesn't work hard, but just like, Usain Bolt is never going to set a world record in the mile. Just genetically, they're just not built for that. No matter how hard they train, it's not their strong suit. And I think Kelvin is a guy who just motors away. That guy just seems to be able to keep on going and going and going. And so I don't think that's an advantage that Whitaker's going to have, that he's going to be able to basically survive the onslaught and be able to come through in the end and go, okay, I'm going to have a better gas tank. I think they're pretty evenly matched up there. And I think that, that Whitaker's a better striker as far as with hands and feet, but with the added wrestling of Kelvin, I think a 2-1 favorite is a little bit of a stretch for Whitaker.
Yeah, I think so too. Both these guys have knockout power, and you think about, if you look at what Gastelum has been able to do since moving up from welterweight, because in the past there were weight making issues and things like that with him. He seems to have really acclimated to middleweight, and this is a fight that I always like it when I have that hard of a time deciding who I think may come out on top. That generally means that we can plan on a pretty competitive fight. Gastelum is 15-3, while Whitaker, the champion, is 20-4. The co-main event, Frank, is interesting. Boy, they talk about the proverbial potential passing of a torch. Anderson the Spider Silva, one of the all-time greats, is going to be taking on Israel Adesanya. Now, Israel Adesanya is a perfect 15-0 in his fight career. He's gone 4-0 in the UFC. Anderson Silva, last seen in action just about a year ago, got a unanimous decision victory over Derek Brunson. Brunson is something that these two guys have in common, because Adesanya also has Brunson as his last opponent. Difference is he finished Brunson in the first round, and Silva went to decision, and Silva is now 43 years old. Adesanya comes in at age 29. Thoughts on that? Have you got a chance to see Israel Adesanya very much? Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Fighter.
You know what? I'm having to go with Israel on this, because I think what his strong suit is, he's younger, and it looks. The great thing about grappling, like Randy Couture right now is probably 50 years old. Mm-hmm. He's still dangerous, because grappling, because of the reaction time involved in it, you don't need it as much. There's more of a feel game and timing. And those assets, those attributes don't seem to fade as much as time. But I mean, if you look at boxing, it's hard to be an older boxer because, you know, you lose a tenth of a second in reaction time. You have, like, for example, the best example that I can think of is Roy Jones Jr., who I thought in his prime was probably the greatest boxer we've ever seen. I mean, the guy went up and won a heavyweight title, weighing 170, you know, weighed 190, but fought at 175, you know. The minute he lost that little bit of speed, now he still seems ungodly fast to you and I, but that tenth of a second of being able to pull back from a punch, and all of a sudden now he gets knocked into the ropes. You know what I mean? Now his career took a turn, you know, down a different direction. And I think that Anderson Silva has always been a reaction fighter. You know, he's the kind of guy that could put his hands down and make you miss. And a lot of that is a God-given ability that he just, you know, he was born and he worked at it and built and refined those skills, but they're based off of human reaction time. It was kind of like a conversation I was having with Jose Canseco, right? We were talking, and Jose still right now, he owns the record, I think, for the farthest softball hit. Like, you know, he hit it almost 600 fucking feet. I was asking because we went to the batting cages and I got to see him hit. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, that's you now, you know, at 54, whatever, how old he is. I'm like, I can't imagine how. He goes, well, no, I'm just as powerful now as I was in my 30s. I'm like, oh, so do you think that if you didn't have the controversy, you could sign up for a baseball team? He's all, absolutely not. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, oh, I hit just as hard. He goes, but I couldn't see an 85-mile-an-hour fastball. If you threw 85 at me right now, he goes, I can't see it. He goes, back in my day, in my 30s, he goes, you could throw 92, and I thought I could have went and got a soda, came back, you know, scratched my balls, and then fucking hit it. He goes, that seems slow motion to me. You know, I was like, oh, shit. He goes, yeah. At a certain point, I lost my ability for my eyes to see something coming at me going, oh shit, there it is, boom, got it. So you got to think that if Anderson Silva's fighting style is pretty much based off of that, at what point does it start to go? Well, if you talk to most ophthalmologists, they say, I mean, I just had this conversation with mine on my last thing, you know, because my vision's still 20/20, right? And
Show off.
Yeah. So and I asked the doc, I'm like, hey, so, you know, I'm 39, you know, I'll be 40 here, you know, end of the year or in the middle of the year next year. Like, when am I expected to start seeing a? He goes, 43 to 45. He goes,
Hello.
you'll see a definitive drop off in your vision. He goes, I forgot what he told me. He goes, I think you're going to lose your near vision more so than your long term vision because the way the eye shape grows, this and that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's just certain things are just physical. You can't beat Father Time, and so I think that Anderson is going to have to still fight like Anderson. It isn't like he's never had. I mean, I've never seen him change levels and shoot on anybody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is he going to all of a sudden develop a style where he looks like a Rashad Evans, where he throws a flurry of combinations, changes levels, and runs through somebody? I don't see it. So he's going to have to kind of like live by the sword, die by the sword, fight with a striking style against a guy who is just as good of a striker offensively than he is, who's also now, 15 years his junior, you know? Like,
It's like you're fighting a younger version of yourself.
and with a style that really does lend itself to youth. You know, that type of fighting style is very much of a younger man's fighting style.
Yeah. Anderson Silva. Now, this is an interesting thing. Anderson Silva's almost a 5-1 underdog in this fight. Adesanya is ranked number 6 among middleweights. Anderson Silva is ranked 15th. Now, according to Silva, when he was approached about doing this fight, he said, well, why would I want to do this? You know, MMA Junkie had some reporting on this where it's like, you know, why would I want to do this? Because, you know, at this point in my career, kind of what do I have to gain, you know, by taking this fight? And according to Anderson, I haven't heard Dana quoted directly on this, but according to Anderson, Dana White said, because if you win, I'll give you a title shot. Now,
that would be the only way that I can see. Now, because I agree with Anderson. Very few people know who Israel is outside of the hardcore fans.
Right.
If you walk down the street right now and ask people who, you know, nobody knows.
Yeah.
Almost everybody, even casual fans, know who Anderson Silva is.
Yeah.
You know, at one point, I mean, he was the kingpin of MMA. So he really has, as far as I'm concerned, nothing to gain by taking this fight and everything to lose. Because I don't think, you know, 10 years from now, people aren't going to sit there and go, well, you know, he might have got the shit knocked out of him, but you got to realize that, you know, he was 43. The other guy was like, you know, in his late 20s. No, you know what I mean? Like, there was some extra factors. They're just going to see.
It's like how you rationalize my fight.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, people forget all that stuff. Like, all the extra, like, factors that go into it. They just see a win and a loss. And so, but if they give him a title shot, that definitely seems like
Now, what do you think about the arbitrary nature of giving him the title shot? Because, I mean, first of all, we'll take into consideration that Dana White probably feels like this is a fairly safe bet, that, hey, what I'm really getting out of this is a star-making opportunity for my future star here, Israel Adesanya, because he's going to beat such a legendary name. But if he doesn't, I offered Anderson Silva that title shot as compensation for it. I mean, Silva's still 15, so he beats number 6. I mean, most people, that's not going to automatically shoot them all the way up into number 1 contender status. It would be a little bit arbitrary, but given his, given his cachet, maybe deserved. I don't know.
It's not like we haven't. We've seen guys ranked lower. Mm-hmm. Get title shots with less,
It happened with Dan Henderson, right? When Hendo fought.
And then you got Georges St. Pierre, too, who never even fought at welterweight.
Right,
I mean, we can point at a couple different examples of a situation occurring where a guy with a name gets his opportunity off of what he used to do. Yeah. But at least in this situation, I think out of those examples being brought up, the Georges St. Pierre, the Dan Henderson, if Silva can come through and beat Israel, you can arguably say, well, he's back on track. I mean, he just beat a guy who, at striking, who's arguably better than everybody else in the top 15 at striking. Yeah. And he beat him at what he does best at. Like, who else is going to stand in front of Anderson? If Israel couldn't do it, then pretty much, I mean, I think that if you told me that this is the Monday after the fight, and Anderson knocks out Israel, and you're like, okay, now he's fighting the winner of Whitaker, and I'm betting on Anderson. Mm-hmm. If the Anderson shows up that's still on point, that can outstrike Israel, then he is the champ. Then I think that the two guys right now that are possibly holding the belt, and when he gets that title shot, he has an extremely strong chance of winning. So I mean, like, and then it makes for a good argument because you can sit there and justify why he gets a title shot. You're like, greatest striker in the world is back on point. You know what I mean? Like, so, he had to adjust with age. He figured it out, and now he just beat the young and up-and-coming star. That's a better, justification for a 15 going for a title shot than we've seen in the past.
Well, speaking of controversial title shot opportunities, Colby Covington is sounding off again. The normally shy, introverted Colby Covington has been coaxed out of his shell for comment about Tyron Woodley's upcoming title defense against Kamaru Usman. Now, Covington is upset that he is not getting that shot at UFC 235, Frank. So much so that he is threatening to sue the UFC over not getting a title shot. Now, put on your amateur lawyer's hat, and you can help me decide if he has a case here for suing, unprecedented, suing the promotion for not giving him a title shot. Here's his quote. He says, he will make the UFC's life a living hell if he is not granted a title shot. He says, quote, we may have to go to court, and this may be a lawsuit, because let's be honest, if Tom Brady wins the AFC championship and just all of a sudden Roger Goodell says you're not going to the Super Bowl because we don't like you, no, that's not how it works. He told our friends over at MMA Junkie Radio. He continued, if the UFC wants to be a circus and be a corrupt business and go about their business, then that's their problem. I'm standing up for what I believe in. I don't care what Uncle Fester has to say. Now, that's interesting because that is an Addams Family reference. That's an analogy to Dana White's lack of hair, and way before Colby Covington's time. So he impresses me there a little bit that he's aware of who Uncle Fester is.
But, I can see it.
Yeah.
But Dana has a little bit too much beard, but same body weight.
Yeah. But he says, and maybe if I could see Dana in a black cloak, because Uncle Fester always had the black cloak on. But anyway, he says as far as taking another fight that is not a title shot. He said they're wanting to pay him, quote, a fifth of the paycheck that they promised him. That ain't happening. I'll sit on the shelf all day. We'll go to court, and I'll make it a living hell for the UFC. Gut instinct, Frank, is that I feel like the case might not be winnable.
Yeah.
Might not be winnable.
I mean, his example and analogy is on a sport that has very little crossover to our sport. Mm-hmm. You have a football game where there's a set pattern of a playoff series where if a team wins, it goes on to play the next, going up a bracket.
Mm-hmm. And even that is not a law, by the way. I mean, the NFL wouldn't do that, but if for some reason they had occasion to be concerned about some team that was advancing up the playoff bracket, they have the ability to say, no, we're not going to let you play.
Yeah, but there's betting on that. I don't know if they can. I mean,
there's betting on this.
Yeah, but betting on who's going to the next thing. So if you pull a team and now you change up the betting brackets on who's going next. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's still harder to do. Whereas it is,
and it wouldn't happen. I'm just saying it's not like it's a law that it's not on the books somewhere that you can refer to.
But the UFC can put whoever they want in a title shot. I mean, if tomorrow Brad Pitt decided he wanted to fight, as long as the Athletic Commission okays it, like that's the only legal loophole they ever have to jump through. Is whoever they match up to has to be, commissioned or signed off on by the commission that okay, this guy can walk in there and not die. Once they sign off, that's the only legalities that the UFC is really governed under. They can put anybody against anybody within that parameter. So for him to think that there's some kind of legal case because they didn't choose to use him, I mean, you don't think that when George St. Pierre moved up to middleweight and got a title shot and got to basically jump over every other middleweight in the division, that if there was any attorney out there, I mean, and a lot of the guys that are being managed right now, they're managed by guys who are attorneys. If they thought there was some kind of way to go ahead and, make some money off of this or to push it in a certain direction, do you really think you're the first guy that thought about this? I mean, it just being morally fucked up doesn't mean legally fucked up. You know what I mean? Like there's a huge difference. There's all kinds of atrocities I see. I go, that's not fucking right. You're like, you're right. Morally, it's not right, but as far as legally, there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
No, I don't think so either. But always interesting when Colby Covington has something to say.
Makes good headlines.
It does. Speaking of having something to say, he's not alone. Khabib Nurmagomedov has turned down the opportunity to do the public service announcement for the anti-bullying. We talked about that on our last episode.
I kind of figured he would.
He would have had his suspension reduced. I think it would have been reduced from like 9 months to 6 months, I think.
Wasn't it 12 months to 9 months or something like that?
I thought it was 9 to 6.
I think it was 9 to 6. Yeah. I think that's what they both got. It would have been 9 months. But this is why
would have been 9 months.
It's now going to be 9 months. That's the full suspension.
I always thought it's going to be 9 months if he does the PSA.
No, it was a $500,000 fine and a 9-month suspension would have been cut to less. But his reasoning for not doing the anti-bullying PSA is interesting. He gave this interview to a Russian language website, quote, "The state of Nevada is where drugs, prostitution, and gambling are officially permitted. Let them work on themselves." Now, have you ever seen Casablanca?
Oh, yeah, a long time ago. I think in high school they brought it in.
I
think I slept through most of it, dude. Sorry.
Give it another shot. One of the greatest films of all time. But one of my favorite moments in there is where Inspector Renault, who is the supposed arm of the law in this illegal gambling casino, says to Humphrey Bogart's character, he says, "I'm shocked to find out that gambling is going on in this establishment." And right at that time, one of the dealers comes up to him and he goes, "Here's your winnings, sir." And he's like, "Oh, thank you." Puts them in his pocket. That's kind of how I feel about this. Like, Khabib must have been shocked to find out that all this time people have been gambling on his fights here in Las Vegas. And by the way, going back and forth to the beer concession and maybe having a prostitute on their arm in the expensive seats, this all must have been shocking to him to find out that he was helping to generate that ill-gotten money, don't you think?
Well, I mean, according to his faith, I mean, even the ring card girls should be an affront to him. They're walking around scantily clad, promoting sexuality, which, that's not very, conducive towards, the Islamic law.
Yeah. He should only fight in Utah now. That's the decree he should make. You know what's funny about ring card girls? As heterosexual as I am, just a quick aside, I have no use for them. I don't. I guess I compartmentalize my sexuality and my violence. Like, if I'm watching one of the porns that Mikey shot, I don't want a legit MMA fight to break out at that moment. That would ruin it for me, even though I enjoy, in different circumstances, an MMA fight. So in the middle of my legit MMA fight, I don't want people to start fucking and distract me from that. I like to separate them. You know what I mean?
I have a very strong line between the two myself.
Yeah, I just
not
don't
into the whole choking, slapping thing.
I just don't have a need for it. And you know what I wonder? The UFC has been doing these little short documentaries. I guess kind of like ESPN has
What do
those
you think
30
we're
for
gonna
30s.
boy?
Elias Theodoro has done that for Invicta, the guy with the cool
I know.
hair.
When do you think we're going to get in the UFC, though?
Oh.
Because I think have we talked about this already? Because
I don't think so.
I know the Rams, they
Yeah.
have male cheerleaders now.
They do? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And very obviously.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no.
Is that right?
There was no doubt. I'm like, oh, that was pretty smart. You get to hang out with the cheerleaders.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no, this guy does not care that he's
These
hanging
guys
out
are
with the
safe.
cheerleaders. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, your wife can go and hang out with this guy any
Yeah.
day of the week, spend the night. They can sleep in the same bed. I have no worries whatsoever.
I did. Maybe I'll have to check that out. I didn't know about that. But the Fight Pass is doing these little like mini docs on right.
No, and you haven't heard them talk. I saw it was one of the morning shows or something.
Yeah.
It showed a clip of them talking. And I was like, whoa, my eyebrows got singed.
You find a picture of this or some video, Mikey, while we're talking about it. But the Fight Pass, they're doing these little series of documentaries, and one of the little short documentaries they have that I noticed is on the UFC ring card girls. And I was like, what are you going to talk to them about? Like, one of them, I remember.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
They talked to the ring card girls?
I haven't watched it. I don't know. I remember, I still tease George and Goes about this from MMA Junkie Radio. One time when WEC was being absorbed by the UFC, when they merged them, they had one of the WEC ring card girls on, and she was going into this long, elaborate explanation of how she envisioned the transition for her particularly being moving from WEC ring card girl to UFC ring card girl.
Am I just a dick thinking that
No.
this is like the epitome of taking your job way too fucking serious? I'm like, dude,
yes,
you hold a car.
Yes.
I sometimes think people take fighters way too serious. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, look, at the end of the day, dude, I'm half naked fighting another guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
You're not
it's
doing
entertainment. You know what I
brain
mean?
surgery.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like a heart surgeon.
Yeah.
That guy's fucking impressive human being. I'm all, you don't even have to fucking go to
Yeah.
school to do what
Yeah.
I do. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to have a little bit of a, a barrier for fear.
Yeah. I was listening to this girl go on. I was listening. Is that real? That's not real, is it?
No,
That's
that's real.
absolutely 100% real.
What? No, it's not. That's not real.
Yeah.
Let me try to I'll try to find a video, but yeah, that's
All right. Well, let's verify. But
That's the guy. I saw him doing an interview. Him and there's another one.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when the ring card girl was saying that about WEC, it's funny because that's my exact thought. I thought, all you're having to do is take off a blue bikini and put on a red one. That was the big transition. That was from WEC to UFC.
Like, they even have a helper. It isn't like they got to figure shit out on their own.
Oh, and I'll tell
you
you,
have a guy at the side who helps them up the stairs.
Yeah.
Points which direction to walk.
Yeah.
They just hold the sign. They come back around. Then he helps get them back down again and gets them to their chair.
And I'll tell you another thing that they do too. Then this drives me crazy because I'll pull back the curtain for you for a minute because I sit there on media row for the fights and they have the ring card girls sit right by there, right? So in between rounds, they're sitting in their little chairs with their satin robes on, and they let them play on their phones. And I don't like that. To me, even if you're not interested in what's going on, You don't need to be on there with your Clash of Clans or your swiping left or whatever you're doing, because I know you're not on there looking up to see what the most takedowns, Anderson Silva's ever had in a fight. And I'm like, at least let's look interested, since we're on the clock for, because that stuff ends up on camera too.
Yeah.
All right, what do we have here? Okay, that's real. This little video of the... Wow. I had no idea this was going on.
I didn't know either until basically a week before the Super Bowl.
Are they the only ones?
I think there's two teams.
Yeah, I think New Orleans. No, some other team has it too.
I'm going to guess Miami. Miami should have them.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Wow.
Or San Francisco.
Or San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, look, New Orleans.
Oh, it is New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Huh.
Also very safe, wife friendly.
Yes. That's the kind of friend, if your wife's going to have a male friend, that's the kind of friend I check off right now. Mrs. Muir can be friends with him.
Yeah. That's the kind of guy that's going to force a makeover on you. The two of them were going to get together and force
you'll know if I'm wearing tighter jeans, who picked them out.
Yeah. All right. What about the well, you know what? We'll get to that in Porno Mikey's headlines, because I think he's got something about the Super Bowl. Shall we just segue to that? Why don't we do another award-winning edition of Porno Mikey's headlines?
So speaking of Super Bowl, ratings were down. Lower in that.
Quick positioning statement. Who watched the Super Bowl? I did not.
I got it.
You saw it? You saw it? Okay. I don't. That's nothing new for me because I never watch it. It's funny. I find out. I realize that every Sunday for at least the last maybe 3 years, I've been doing a comedy set at LA Comedy Club, because that's my standing Sunday night gig on Super Bowl Sunday. And I realize the game ends just about the time I go on stage, and I find out who won the Super Bowl the same way every year, which is the news alert on my phone. When that comes on, I'm like, oh, okay.
I don't watch a lot of regular season games just because there's so many, and then I'm busy with the kids and stuff. But come October, I start paying more attention to football, and I watch the playoffs, and then the Super Bowl I always catch.
Here's what I know. Let me force my rudimentary NFL knowledge in here as it pertains to the Super Bowl, and then you guys can do the expert level stuff. I know that the New England Patriots played the Los Angeles Rams, and the New England Patriots go to the Super Bowl a lot. And the Los Angeles Rams, it's a big deal for them because they just moved to Los Angeles from St. Louis. But I'm so old that I can remember when they were in Los Angeles the first time. And then they moved and they've come back, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what about the ratings were down?
The first time in a long time where it was under 100 million people watched. It was 98.2 million. But then you factor in 2.6 million people streamed the game Sunday.
I heard it was it not a very good game?
I liked it.
I thought it was a good game,
too.
I
thought it was a good game, too, because, the strategy. You were on your chair the whole time because it was such a close game.
Yeah.
That one fuck-up from either guy, the game was going that direction. You talk about one pick and pick six, that could have been the whole game.
Because it was low scoring?
It was the lowest scoring game of all time.
Game. So if you're like a super casual, it's like a ground game, like if there's two grapplers versus two strikers, if you just sort of tune in, you want to see blood and
going into
cuts,
the third quarter, I think it was, or the start of the fourth quarter, I think it was still 3-0.
A lot of people in the crowd yelling, "Stand them up!" Was there a lot of that going on?
That would have been, Well, people on Twitter were like, because earlier the Rams played the Chiefs, and there was it was both teams had over 50 points. And so people were like, we could have had, this game, and that's, some people think that's more exciting. But if you kind of watch, not even super casual, if you're just sort of like every Sunday watch, I think you'd like the game.
One of the tweets I saw was these two teams are playing like they know the winner has to go to the White House. That made me giggle.
I saw that.
Yeah. What? Okay. Now,
and also there was a lot behind it because Tom Brady. It's funny. The guy garners a lot of hate because he's successful. I actually was pulling for the Patriots to win just because. I was also the guy though back about 6 years ago when they had their undefeated season.
Yeah.
And they were playing the Giants. I wanted to see them win because I wanted to say that I lived through an undefeated football season. And so Tom Brady's 41 years old. He'd already made, I think, he already had won 5 before that. Same with Belichick. So there's a lot of record-setting presidents that was going on had they won, and they did win. So I was pulling for the old guy to go ahead, in football terms, to pull it off. You know what I mean? So I was hoping they would do well.
Yeah.
Do you have any bet on the football NFL? Oh
no.
Amanda and I went, and I did all the weird prop bets. So I did like 8 things, and
give us an idea. Like what are
so it was the Patriots had to win by 4. There had to been only 1 interception, no fumbles, 4 total field goals, like weird shit like that. Like the Rams had
all of it.
Yeah, all of it. Because
no, you can't parlay them. That's all separate bets.
Well, I did it on a parlay sheet.
I thought you couldn't parlay.
They have specific sheets for only these certain props.
Oh, okay.
So I did that. I had 8 things, and
if all that would have happened,
I would have won. I would have won $3,000 on a $20 bet, and I was 6 out of 8. But here's what sucked is that I would have won. If the Rams would have made that field goal, and then on the last one, I would have won.
Oh wow!
So 2 of my things didn't happen because of that missed field goal, and I was like, I was sitting there, and when they missed it, I was. That's why the game was interesting for me because I had $3,000. I was thinking, I was spending $3,000 in my head the whole time, thinking, well, I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close, and then he missed the field goal. And
who's the one comedian that always works with Howard Stern?
Artie Lang.
He always, I see him stand up. We talked about that one time.
Yeah.
Where he goes, you don't find football interesting? Well, here, empty your bank account. We'll bet on it and do half a gram of Coke. And trust me, you'll be into the game.
Poor Artie Lang, man. He's in everybody's death pool. He's been in everybody's death pool for a number of years now, but he just got busted again for, I think he tested for heroin or something. That guy's constantly at death's door.
When's the deadline for the death pool?
Already happened, right?
Our phone booth fighting death pool has already commenced, but if you want in and you didn't get in on this, by the way, there's about 50 of you playing in the phone booth fighting death pool league, and the season kicked off officially this past Monday. But I talked to Doug Stanhope, who is playing, by the way. Doug is in the phone booth fighting league. So cool. If you're playing with us and you go and look at the standings and you see Stanhope, that is actually Doug Stanhope. But what we're going to do is, just like we did last year, we're going to have a midsummer classic. So we will do the combo league of our show and Doug Stanhope's podcast together during the summer. So there'll be a summer league that other people can get in if they miss this opportunity. So that's that's going to be your cue there, Mikey. Now, what about the halftime show? I know there was a lot made of the halftime show because unlike years past, a lot of artists were turning down doing this because of Colin Kaepernick. So they were a little hard pressed to get somebody that would actually do it. Enter Maroon 5, and Maroon 5 said they would oblige.
Yeah, they did it, and they actually caught some heat because they didn't.
SpongeBob, man.
Yeah, they didn't do the SpongeBob.
I thought they were going to.
Yeah.
I've never watched a halftime show. I started to watch that one because I was expecting to see the SpongeBob little
tribute.
Yeah. And then when they fucking threw it off to whatever his name is,
the rapper guy.
Yeah, I was like, fuck this. I went back outside.
Yeah,
I went to my usual spot during the halftime show, which is in the backyard, smoking a cigar.
Oh yeah, I have seen some halftime shows in the past. Usually, there's not anything there for me because they don't play the kind of music that I'm interested in. But I remember the year that Bruce Springsteen played it, and that was rough for me because there were 2 things that I had hoped Springsteen would never do. One, appear on American Idol, which he never did, fortunately, and 2, never do the Super Bowl halftime show. And he finally did, because they'd asked him a number of years to do it, and he finally did it, and I was like, oh. I remember...
Did you do a good job?
Yeah, it was good. But I remember...
How come you don't want him to do it?
Because, well, for one, those things are always very contrived to me. Like, they're lip-synced, and they work in dancers and stuff. Things like... Because if you go see Springsteen...
Well, what's funny is me and Mrs. Muir have the exact different viewing tastes.
Yeah.
So during the whole first half of the football game, she's in the kitchen with the ladies all talking, and I only see her when I go get another beer and walk back out to the front room. And then I say, hey, babe, halftime show. And that's when I get up and I walk outside. And she walks in and takes my chair.
She tags in.
Yeah, and then she watches the halftime show. And then she'll knock on the window. Halftime show's over. Come back inside. And then we switch places again.
It's just they usually gravitate toward J Lo or Gwen Stefani or those kind of acts where it's almost like watching a Broadway musical. There's a lot of dancing and production stuff, and so for my for example, I brought up Springsteen. You go see Springsteen. That is a straight ahead rock and roll show. There is no dancing. There is no interpretive anything going on. So so I was kind of like, well, unless he's gonna do that, and that's pretty much what he did, right? So it was okay, but still, I kind of like
He kept a lot of control.
Yeah, I like my bands to stay away from that sort of thing. But anyway, they got Maroon 5, who I'm not a fan of, so I didn't feel like I missed anything.
He's a good singer, right? The guy from Maroon 5?
The thing I don't like about him is I don't like the way that they use auto-tune, which is a real prevalent thing now. Anytime you hear one of these guys, it sounds like they're underwater. You'll hear an effect on their vocal. And the auto-tune...
Oh, he uses auto-tune?
Yeah.
I thought that was a rapper thing.
It is. It's a lot of rappers use it.
It's all the rappers now. I don't think I've ever... If you right now probably had a rapper rap without auto-tune on, I don't think I could recognize what song it was.
Yeah, that's why they all kind of sound that same way.
Yeah.
And we could have you sing into that microphone and put auto-tune on it and make you sound like $1 million.
That's why I've always wondered. So now basically it just goes on just for whoever has the look, because you can make anybody sound good.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, it's like the consumer
That's when I
just kind of doesn't
realized
care
Kim
about
Kardashian has no discernible talent besides, making a porno.
Right.
Because I think she tried to make a music career, and like she was, that's the only clip I've ever actually seen.
Yeah.
Because I was interested. My wife was like, "Oh, she's gonna do music." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll have to stop clowning because maybe she does have a talent outside of the pornography." And so when I sat there and watched
Wrong
it,
again.
she wouldn't come out of her chair. And then when she sang it, and actually for a minute there, I was like, oh, autotunes could even make her sound somewhat decent, but she has no rhythm. Fuck, I dance better than she does. You know what I mean? Like, put me in a dress and I'd be more sexually. She was really bad. I was like, wow, that is horrible. Like, how can you be that hot and not be able to move or like be able to like fake it at all?
That happens on set sometimes. You get a really hot girl and you're just like, you're so hot, but like this isn't so hot. And you're just like,
give us I like where we're going here, Mikey.
Yeah.
And that's why porno Mikey's headlines is the perfect place to do this. Yeah. You know what we should do? We should challenge Mikey on every episode to draw at least one porno analogy to some story that's in the news. So let's see how he does with this one. All right, we were talking about Super Bowl halftime show. You're going to compare it to porn shoots.
Yeah, well, more like Kim Kardashian thing. You get girls that there's sexual energy, and then there's like looking hot, and sometimes you get girls who like kind of show up, and you go like, "No, man, we don't have any change here. Like it's okay," but you turn the camera on, you put the makeup on, turn the camera on, and you go, "Holy shit!" Like
really give it their all.
Yeah, really go for it. The other girls who sort of show up, and you go, "Holy shit!" They get out of the car, and you're like. You want to like creep around while they're doing photos and look, and then you're kind of doing photos and you're like, oh, like nah, never mind. I'll go,
they just rely on the looks.
Yeah, I'll go set up for the next scene. It's like sometimes my boss has had to like during still photos like move, like treat them like a marionette and like move every single one of their joints. It's like, okay, instead of just saying, all right, give me the twist and show off your ass, they're just like, and then you have to just like. He has to go in like.
Well, I mean, you worked at a strip club. I've seen it there, where I've seen girls get up on stage when I was a bouncer at a strip club, and I remember one time there was a really beautiful girl, and she did not want to go up on stage, and you can pay to not go up on stage. But we hit a limit to how many girls we could have off stage. Because at this point, we're like, well, fuck, we can't have an empty stage. We already have 80 girls pay. And so this girl showed up late. And I think it was the manager's way of kind of punishing her because, hey, get here fucking on time. I have customers that, basically I lost out on because I could have thrown your ass in there and you're hot and made them stay, but I had no hot girls here. So he was making a point, but he made her get up on stage and it was like the worst 3 minutes. Like it was so bad. Like even when she like extended her foot up in the air, she didn't point her toes. I never realized that's an important thing for a woman to do. She like put her foot flat, like heel, like this, and bent her knee, and it almost looked kind of masculine. Like I was watching them all. How can you be so hot and all of a sudden turn me off so much with just your body movement sucks? Holy shit!
I will see your porn analogy, and I will raise you a hooker analogy because we see the same thing. I am fond of saying, because a lot of times, sometimes you get a girl comes in, she's new, and sometimes she'll say. The one on the rare occasion one of them doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, they'll go I don't know if I can get picked out of a lineup with all these girls are so much hotter than me. But I always tell them, listen, if you're giving me the option of I've got a 10, right, like what Mikey's describing, getting out of the car, but they're going to have no personality whatsoever, or a 5 or a 6,
with a bubbly personality. Yeah.
that 5 or a 6 will out earn the 10 every day of the week, because now it's a long game.
Yeah.
It won't be all at the drop of a hat, like in one transaction. But what's going to happen is they're going to endear themselves so much to that person they're talking to, that guy quits paying attention to how much money he's
We had a
spending.
girl just like that, and I vividly remember what she, like, if she walked in, like, that's
Yeah.
her. Can't remember her name, but she was like a 6.
Yeah.
She was okay. Like, I mean, looked like she should be out in college.
Yeah.
No breast implants, B-size breast. You know what I mean? A cute face,
Yeah.
but not much of a body. Like, thin. Like, but nothing again that if she walked by you, you wouldn't be like, holy shit. But she went up on stage and she did a whole thing to the White Stripes song, like, woo-hoo. That was a remake of one of the shit, I can't remember.
No.
It was
Musical white belt time.
Fuck. But anyways, it was a cool song, and she did a whole dance routine up there.
That was the jiu-jitsu equivalent of Frank was about to go for like a Barambola as a white belt.
He grabbed the gi here, and somehow he fucking ended up here. But anyway, she went up there, and I remember sitting watching, and at the end of it, I didn't realize she didn't even take her top off. I was like, oh, fuck, do you really, like, someone else pointed out to me, goes, oh, you got to tell her to take her top off from now on. And I looked over, I was like, dude, that was such an impressive routine and personality, and the way she was laughing and giggling, and it looked like she genuinely enjoyed being up there. Like, it made everybody, like, the whole room got into a better mood. I was like, oh yeah, she didn't take her top off, huh?
See there?
Like, not even necessary.
Shout out to the 6s.
You ever had to, like, show a girl how to dance? I've had to, like, do the poses for the girl.
No fucking way. No, I haven't had to do that. No, please tell that story.
Well, the girl, she was, what language was it? Russian or Spanish? So it was like kind of spoke a little bit of English, but like it would be better if like she could just like look. And my boss was like having to go back, and he was doing it. And then like
Did you have to demonstrate with another person?
No, it was Pretty Girl, so it was just solo pictures. But like,
thank God it wasn't with an actor. You're like, okay, look, grab it like this. Have you ever ridden a motorcycle? Let me show you the wrist action.
That's when Eric Frost shows up all of a sudden. Wasn't that his name?
Who?
Eric Frost?
Oh, Lucas Frost.
Lucas Frost, yeah.
No, and so my boss was tired of setting his camera down, getting up, positioning her.
Yeah.
And then, because she kind of knew like what to do, but she just couldn't like, it was just a language barrier. So if I was kind of like off to the side, and I would just do that, and
that'd make a great B-roll. Like this is how you both. And
yeah. Luckily, there were no other people on set, so I knew that I wasn't being recorded. So I had to do the stupid spread, and so I just sit down and do that, and fucking like spread and like turn, and like sit dog and sit this way, and it was just like it was.
Were you impressed on how well you knew the poses?
I was, because at this point I'd been doing this for a few years, and I'm like, Jesus, I know these poses. I could fucking nail them really well.
You know, they say like when you learn another language,
Yeah.
like if you do it in your sleep, or when you're doing something, like I always laugh, like it never failed, like new waitresses in the club, they always had that dream of calling out drinks, because they're like under pressure all the time and they're learning the drinks. Have you ever dealt with that in industry before, where people get into it and they sleep it almost? So I'm wondering, like, your wife said, what pose were you doing last night in your sleep? You're like grabbing an ass cheek, lifting it up, bring it.
Wow. All right. Nicely done there, Mikey. All right. Where do we go now?
Let's see. What else do we got? Oh, let's take a left turn. Have you heard of the governor of Virginia has been in a lot of hot water over the last week?
Ralph Northam.
So it started off with his abortion comments.
You seen this, Frank? Oh,
it's pretty gross what he said.
A Democrat who beat Ed Gillespie in the last election, and
so here's what the main controversy of what he said about the late-term abortion bill. I highlighted the quote: "The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired, and then a discussion would be had between the physicians and the mother."
In what situation?
Okay,
That's basically post-birth abortion. Basically, that's what this guy says would be okay.
The bill that they're talking about, both in Virginia,
what's going on now?
the bill that they're talking about in both Virginia and New York involves late-term abortions.
Like basically up to birth.
Yes. but not out of the womb.
But he said on
yes.
Yeah.
And this guy, because of what he said, and of course,
Does he say something stupid then double down on it?
Well, this actually, we're not even getting into what. I mean, it's amazing when you can say this at the beginning of the week and then manage to get that out of the headlines by something else you do. We're going there, but yes, this was a very stupid thing to say, to get into.
So then, basically, people got outraged over that
because what they but I just want to say what they started envisioning was like, first of all, you're talking about situations where like a mother's life is in danger or a kid is, born basically like brain dead, like this kind of stuff. This isn't just some elected, I think we have 3 kids and I thought we wanted the 4th.
No one's arguing that point,
right.
No one thinks that, okay, I made a mistake, I have a healthy baby, I'm 8 months pregnant, and I'm going to get an abortion.
But the image that this created was that you could have a baby born and then they essentially just put a bullet in its head because you decided you didn't want it, buyer's remorse. So that was a big part of the problem he started.
Right. And then so there's that, and then so people did some digging and they found his yearbook, and there he goes.
That's see any problem with that?
That's
there,
a page
Frank?
out of his yearbook.
Nice.
And so there's a guy, for our audio only. There's his page got his name on it, his official senior year picture, and then him by a Corvette, him in a cowboy kind of outfit, and then there's a picture where a guy is in blackface, and there's a guy in a Klansman hood, full Klansman.
He's 25 years old at this point.
Oh, this is his college yearbook, right?
Yeah, college yearbook. This was like his medical, because he's a doctor. This was his
he's a pediatrician, which is weird why the abortion comic got so much heat, too.
Yeah, this was his medical school yearbook. He's 25 years old at this point, and he's got this on his yearbook page. Now, he, at first... Jump in here, Mikey, if you've got anything more on this. At first, he apologizes.
At first he apologizes and said that was a long time ago, whatever. And then then people basically, a huge outpouring of people called for him to resign. And then I think the next day said, you know what, I had time to review the footage, and that's not me in
he's
the
claiming
picture.
It's not either. Now, it's still on his yearbook page, right, which creates a whole other question.
He should have just stuck to the apology. Because, look, this is the way I look at it. And I think that shit's going to have to change because of how we are nowadays. I don't want to go back 35 years to make an opinion on what someone did in college.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming that most people, like myself, during their early 20s are fucking morons. Now, I mean, certain things, if you're a pedophile or a rapist, obviously go above and beyond. It's like, all right, those are pretty defining characteristics. But even some bigotry, people can grow. I really do feel that. Or like, some girl taking pictures where she's fucking acting like a whore. It's like, okay, she's in her early 20s. And now she's running for politics, in her 50s. I'm assuming she's not the same person she was in her early 20s. And so showing a picture of her drunk with her makeup all fucked up, I don't think should be defining on who she is, or she should resign now. Why? Because she acted like an idiot 30 fucking years ago? And I think that we're going to have to probably pass some laws. Eventually sit there going, hey, you can't go back more than 10 years on somebody. If someone does something stupid that's not illegal, but just in distaste, at a certain point, when do we start going, hey, man, that was back when they were in their fucking teenage years? Because that might, right now, this is here. Someone had to go to a phone, a photo. But we're getting to a point where with Facebook and everything else, all the politicians in 30 years from now, all their dumb shit's being recorded right now.
Right.
You're not going to be able to find anybody that you can't find something stupid on them.
Well, we wouldn't be able, just to answer your point, I don't think we'd be able to legislate that. What we could do as a culture is decide what matters and what doesn't. I mean, we can, because I think what you're saying is completely rational. My personal perspective on this, and I'll tell you where this would be a bridge too far with me, even the fact that he's 25 and all the rest of that, is, this whole blackface business, which goes all the way back to like minstrel shows. I mean, that has a long, rich history of being offensive. The problem is, and this is me coming from the South, the problem is not everybody there got the memo that was offensive. I can't tell you offhand that anybody I went to high school with ever did something that involved blackface, but I'm guessing probably someone in there did. I mean, my high school diploma has a embossed Confederate flag on it. But I can tell you this, that that's personally not something I would have ever done because I knew even as a kid that was offensive, okay? But even if I had not, even if I had thought, because this guy later said that, well, there was one time that I dressed up as Michael Jackson and I put blackface on, okay? Even though that would be considered offensive by a lot of people, I can tell you one thing that to me is a whole nother level, and that's standing next to a guy in a Klan outfit.
Yeah.
That right there, I
Do you think dressing up as Michael Jackson's offensive?
like if you did the blackface, like if you, not just dressing up, I mean.
Oh, okay, I put black, because I mean, I guess I wouldn't find it offensive if a black guy dressed up as a white singer. But if he put on white face, I guess I could see where he's trying to clown or be funny. Then yeah, that's offensive.
I mean,
I think it's because of the history of blackface.
it's the
blackface was used to basically used as a token of race, like not one
Yeah,
as
so-
an image
Well, I thought
of
it goes
racism.
back to the point where before black actors weren't allowed to act. So if you wanted a white actor to portray a part in a movie, and he was portraying a black actor, they had to put.
And the portrayals of the black people were like
cartoonish.
It's so cartoonish.
Yeah, but I mean that's also
and I
during
think that's
the era.
what
They did it during.
blackface,
I mean, if you look back in the day, I seen one of who was it? Was it Jerry Lee Lewis? He played in a movie where he was playing a Chinese guy,
Jerry Lewis.
and
yeah.
it was
Yes, those were
offensive as fuck.
And Asians are offended by that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But it's like, okay, but during that time, during that era, like, you know, it was meant to be funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't alive then, so I don't know.
Here's the if you know your history by the time you got to the 80s, and I can say this as a child of the 80s, if you knew your history by the time you got to the 1980s, you would have known that blackface via minstrel shows was considered very offensive.
Okay.
Now here's the problem. A lot of people slept through history class. So I kind of, although I don't excuse it, at that point I'm kind of like, you might, ironically, you're stupid to the point that you don't understand that cartoonishly stupid portrayal is offensive because you yourself are a stupid person because you weren't paying attention. I still don't, and certainly now, that's nothing anybody would want to do or defend. But this, I'll tell you a story that I think is somewhat relatable.
Out of curiosity, when was his? I mean, was this in the 80s?
84. This was 84. But I'll tell you something about this Klan outfit thing that I think is somewhat applicable. So in the 90s, I mean, I'm still, I'm in my 20s at that point. I'm working in pro wrestling. I worked in pro wrestling for a couple of years. And what I did was I worked behind the scenes as what is called the booker, which is the person who puts the matches together, and I wrote the scripts for television. Hey, you're going to be mad at him. You're going to say this. A lot of times I work with developing the characters. Hey, here's a good character for you, things like that. But it's a regional promotion. This is not the size of the WWE or anything. So, you know the typical wrestling crowd. I mean, it was a working class environment. But I remember one week we had a guy come in, a big burly guy, had some experience with pro wrestling on the regional circuit or whatever, and he starts talking about different characters he can do. Well, sometimes I'm this guy, I'm the mad Russian, or sometimes I put this. And the guy pulled a KKK outfit out of his bag. And first of all, I'll tell you, the thing looks so authentic, I imagine he might have just taken it home from the last meeting he was at. But whether or not that was the case, he pulled that out and suggested that he do a whole storyline with like one of the popular black wrestlers, in the promotion. The black guy actually didn't have a problem with it, but who did have a problem with it was me. And I said, absolutely not. And not only that, I don't think we need you working. I mean, that guy was dismissed because, and when I'm basically the same age as this guy.
With the black guy won?
Yeah, and then when I ran for office, I'd be like, "Hey, I made it so that he won." Okay, I mean,
you might have done some healing there. You can see the KKK guy in his ass whooped. You know what I mean?
But what I'm saying is, even when I'm this guy's age, I'm not in medical school, by the way. I'm working in regional pro wrestling. Okay, I should not be making better decisions than he's making at that point. But I did, just in realizing that this is a non-starter. Like, I'm not even going to think about this for a second. No, We're not doing that. So I actually, and listen, I am progressive in my political thinking. This is a Democratic governor, and I'm telling you right now, this guy should have quit last week, and he needs to be gone, and there's no defense for this.
No, if he would have stuck to the original apology, hey, look, I was in college, it was in poor taste. Everybody else around me, obviously, I didn't get kicked out of the party, like the group I was with. Everybody else kind of condoned it too. I got laughs. It was meant to be offensive. That's why I did it. I look back on it and regret what I did. Do you think that would...
I would have had to have heard it, and even then, I'm telling you, the deal was...
Because I'd be okay with that, because I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just much more forgiving when it comes to just shit done in bad taste, or I've said things where I look back on and go, fuck, man, that was really stupid. Well, now that I see things from this point of view, I wish I never would have said that. But if anybody ever pulls out a recording going, hey, you felt this way about this subject, I'm like, yeah, at the time I did. I really did feel that way then, but then actually as I've traveled the world or I've become more enlightened, I now realize that was moronic, and I don't stand by those thoughts anymore, and I grew as a person.
I'd have to hear it, but I will tell you this. I hold a higher standard for two things. That whole thing with the guy in the Klan outfit, that's the big issue for me. And by the way, just because I don't mean to gloss over this, it's like Mikey said, at first he apologizes for it, then he says he's not in the picture.
No, that was dumb.
That's not something that you... Well, I guess, you don't forget that you...
I guess it's the Kevin Hart thing that's been bugging me mostly. You know what I mean? Like, I really feel like Kevin Hart got a raw deal because it's like he made some tweets.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
You know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah.
They're not... I mean, he's a fucking comic. He's pushing the envelope. Yes. And also, too, I mean, he's raised in a certain culture that he thought a certain way. And now that he lives out in the West Coast, he doesn't think that way anymore, and he even says it. So for him not to be allowed to apologize, I guess, or that his apology is not accepted, kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you. I'm like, hey, look, man, people can fucking grow. He's not standing. It wasn't like he doubled down on it and go, well, he's like, look, it was fucking bad taste. I apologize. He gave a very well thought out apology, explaining to where he grew up, his culture, explained how he came to those thoughts at that time, explained how now he thinks differently.
You're talking about Kevin Hart.
Yeah, Kevin Hart. Yeah. And so, like, to me, I'm like, someone else wrote an article about it going, hey, to the community that was, condemning him now, it's like, you're basically sending a message out there that people aren't allowed to grow.
Right.
You're like, don't you want people to go back and go, fuck, man, I don't like that I thought this way. But now the message you're sending after Kevin Hart is like, hey, if you've ever said contrary, stick to those beliefs, because you're not allowed to cross back over and be apologetic or be remorseful or to sit there and go, hey, I grew as a person. Because once you said it, we're going to condemn you as that person forever.
I'll listen to that more about Kevin Hart than I would this, because we're talking about this guy being the governor. And we're talking about this guy being the governor of a state that itself has a dark racist past. And I hold politicians in higher regard than that. I'm not saying they have to be perfect. I get you.
We're talking a politician and an entertainer.
Yeah, because you're going to be the voice of this. You're the leader of the state. You're the voice of the state. So I do hold him in a higher regard. And the other thing too is this whole thing with him about, I'm deeply sorry for the picture. Wait a second, it's not me. I don't know what the guy's talking about. I don't. That to me sounds like you've got 2 or 3 different stories going. And if you're just telling me that you can't off the bat remember if you ever took that picture, either standing next to a guy in a Klan hood or you were under the Klan hood, I mean, do you guys have to think for a second whether or not you ever put on a KKK costume? No, right? That's one thing.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have to. Yeah. He should have stuck to the original. I'm okay with people apologizing for poor taste.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand what you're saying about the difference between a politician and an entertainer. I guess maybe I'm a little bit more sensitive to it because I'm very angry about how it seems like, the court of public opinion has handled the Kevin Hart situation.
Yeah.
Where I feel that somebody who did something in poor taste or has grown as a human being can't come back from it. So to me, in my mind, is just, that's wrong. So I guess I'm just kind of pissed off at that situation because I'm like, hey, this motherfucker, he said he was sorry. And in the way, if you look back, it wasn't like, he apologized for the shit before it even, you can't sit there and go, well, he's sorry because he got caught. I'm like, well, you can actually look, he apologized for those thoughts before he ever fucking got caught. He did it on his own, so I'm like, what more could you ask for the guy? Besides he never said it in the first place, which guess what? in a perfect world, yeah, but it's not perfect. We all make mistakes. So you're saying now we can't come back from mistakes.
The crazy thing about Ralph Northam, too, is that across the board, Democrats and Republicans are calling for this guy to resign. And he's not resigning. He may still, I mean, the pressure is on, and we'll see what the next couple of days hold, or maybe even he's resigned by the time this podcast is released. But he's being very obstinate about it.
Well, then, even if he does, the lieutenant governor has a sexual assault allegation against him.
Now that would, yes, and that one, I mean, they're going to have to look into that. But now this is where the politics come into play, because the same people who unearthed the yearbook photo, and listen, he's the one that apparently posed for the picture, so he created the evidence, but that was opposition research done against him by his political opposition. They're also the ones who found the sexual harassment thing. So that's a whole nother side of it that makes me suspicious when they start, essentially going, okay, we don't like this podcast, so, we've got stuff on Frank. Oh, hey, by the way, we got stuff on the other guy too, in case they try to just replace Frank. That's when it's all looking a little too organized for me. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the guy.
Also, the third in command in Virginia admitted that he dressed in
Attorney
blackface.
General.
Yeah, too.
Yeah, the Attorney General's like, hey, listen, before anybody
was this
looks
like a
in my
fucking thing in
yearbook.
the 80s to dress up in blackface?
Not in the 80s.
He said he did it at a 1980 college party.
Yeah. This was.
So you got your top
I've
three
never
in
been
command
to
in
a party
Virginia.
in my life and seen. I mean, obviously, I'm much younger than these guys, but I don't think. I mean, and I've seen some pretty outrageous. I've seen a guy, fucking one time, like he was a woman with an abortion, like literally had a little baby with the fucking umbilical cord, and like he wore a gown with blood. Like I've seen some offensive costumes, and I've never seen anybody do blackface.
Well, you were born and raised in Nevada, and I can't say that I can't recall ever having seen it, but I guarantee you around Fort Worth, Texas in the mid-'80s, somebody was doing it somewhere probably. So, yeah, that's just a sign of the changing times. Where else are we going here, Mikey?
Let's see. Let's go to Kiss is on their farewell tour this week.
Oh, yes. Kiss kicked off their end-of-the-road farewell tour this week, Frank. They're actually going to be in Vegas
they're
coming up here.
T-Mobile.
I will be at that show coming up in another week or so. They're just about go and blow that up big. Before you play it,
you already have tickets
pause
to
it
it?
a second. Pause it just a second. No, not as of yet.
Oh,
but I
if
will
you're
be
going to go buy
planning to
tickets, let
attend.
me know. I'll be at tickets with you. Me and Jen will go.
Yeah, okay.
Jen's and you and I.
Okay, yeah.
I'd like to go see him live.
I think you should see it. Yeah, for sure. Okay, we'll make that happen.
I work at T-Mobile. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I get show call for it.
Yeah, this band.
If you don't, do you want to go to it also?
I couldn't afford to go, but
this band.
I should be working it. Either
I don't know
load
how
in
much
or
are
load
tickets?
out.
They're not that much. I mean, you can get in for $50. I mean, you can go all the way up to super expensive, but it's not super expensive. But Kiss is a band that means more to me than just about anything. I mean, when I think about the impact they had on me, first of all, Kiss and I are the same age. They came along just about a year or two after I was born. It is well documented on this show that Paul Stanley of Kiss was more influential on me than my own father, and it was a big deal a couple of years ago.
Anyways.
Yeah, exactly. It was a big deal a couple of years ago when Frank and I got to go to Paul Stanley's house, and Paul co-hosted an episode of Phone Booth Fighting with us. You can go back and catch that in the iTunes archives. And that was because Paul's a big fan of Frank's, and he follows him on Twitter. That was that night at the Hofbrau house when I discovered that he followed you on Twitter and you DM'd. Boy, it's just one of the greatest. Thank you for that, Frank.
You're welcome,
Those are the
man.
greatest nights of my life. Anyway, so that's how much Paul Stanley means to me. Well, they have decided, because Paul and Gene, the two original members in the band, Gene Simmons, are both getting pretty close to right around 70, and they're still doing this. And they've decided that it's time.
I hope I look like Paul when I'm
I
in my
know,
late
right?
60s.
He's still looking all sleek in that costume. Yeah. I know. That is not a costume.
I mean, his
built
arms
for
are all
the,
developed.
Yeah.
And shit, I'm all, fuck, man. Like, good shape.
Well, we're going to look at a little bit of the video from, this was like the night 2 or 3 of the tour. And they haven't set an end date for this. I mean, it's going to go all around the world. They may be playing for, it may be a few more years before it's all said and done. But you're right about the age of 70, and they've decided it's time to retire. So let's look at a little video of Paul and Kiss playing a song here.
I want to thank you one more time. I want to thank you for believing in us from the very beginning. Doesn't really matter if some of you are first timers tonight. It doesn't matter when you come to a party. It just matters that you were at the party. We're so thankful that you're here. We're so thankful to share this night. You look awesome, people. Take a look at yourselves. You're beautiful. So let's do something. Let's do something from Destroyer. This song asks a question, and the question is, do you love me?
And they're doing the big production, the big stage production with all the pyrotechnics and the fire and everything as Kiss built their career on. Now there's Gene. Gene doesn't fit into his costume quite as well, but still able to get into it. There you go. Sounded pretty good for 70 or right thereabouts.
I'm impressed.
Yeah. All right, good. Well, maybe we'll make a night of it. We'll take the show out there. But, yeah, it's a bittersweet time for me saying goodbye to Kiss. Of course, a lot of people claim that, the old It's Our Farewell Tour is the claim that a lot of bands have made and then ended up not sticking to it. But at this age, I
won't believe it when you're that age.
Yeah, I could see it's about time.
Yeah, I remember I saw, back when I lived in L.A., I saw Willie Nelson, and I justified him like, wow, I think he was 81 at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, you got to jump on it if you want to see him. And then now he's been like, 5, 6, 7 years later, he's gone through.
Oh, he didn't come off the road.
Yeah. So I think, and sometimes it's what keeps these old guys alive. Like, if I retire and sat at home, I might die in a month. You know what I mean? But
no, there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
I also try to, whenever I know someone's iconic now, I try to see them whenever they come to Vegas. Like just because, I made that mistake with Siegfried and Roy. I grew up in Vegas. They're pretty iconic magicians. But in my mind, even when I, had the money to go see them, it was like, oh, yeah, when people bring up stuff, like, yeah, it's there. I'll eventually go see them. I didn't make it an urgency to go see them because I'm like, they're fucking going to be around. They're not going anywhere. And then lo and behold, fucking Mr. Tiger fucked up my my experience.
Yeah. I did that with Merle Haggard. He was in town in Vegas.
Yeah.
And someone said, oh, that tour comes through every year. And, I jumped the gun with Willie Nelson, saw him, and I'm like, no, I shouldn't take the day off, blah, blah, blah. And then the next year, 6 months later, Merle Haggard died. I'm like, shit, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You got to catch them while you can.
Yep.
Where else we going here, Mikey?
What do we got? State of the Union.
Yes. Now, this is something I watched every second of. This is my Super Bowl when the State of the Union comes along.
I catch the clips.
Yeah.
With you.
We got a little audio here of
Trump saying America will never be socialist.
Okay.
Hey, are you getting like me? I know he's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, after meeting Richard and us being friends now for the last 2 or 3 years, for a while there, I was really heavily paying attention to everything because then I would call him up and ask him questions.
Yeah.
But now there's so much just bullshit with politics. Now I'm starting to become one of those people that go, who gives a shit? They're all fucking liars. I feel like I'm playing the pinochle game where they're like fucking, okay, look over here. And it's like, It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I think I've unfollowed.
I'm starting to get burnt out.
Yeah, I've unfollowed more political people than I've followed in like the last 2 years.
Like it's not even about issues anymore.
just-
Like it seems like it's all just a fucking. I feel like I'm in high school and it's a popularity fucking thing where it's like, well, so and so dated so and so. I'm like, the fuck does that have to do with anything?
I share your frustration, but I will tell you that it might have just been part of the way that I was brought up to be involved. But my approach to that is the opposite. It actually makes me more involved because I have to direct them. I have to, because if I don't, then they're going to get even worse. Is kind of my take on it. All right, so
maybe
let's hear
I'll rebound back.
Let's hear from the president here.
Here in the United States, we are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country. America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free and we will stay free.
All right.
Oh yeah, they cut
And
the
there's a
Bernie.
shot of Bernie Sanders looking very nonplussed. And then the USA chant breaks out. Okay. So
Tonight,
one reason that this is an interesting topic to discuss is because apart from political affiliation or your beliefs or whatever, I am always on the lookout for a bad argument. Just whether or not I agree with you or not, if you're making a flawed argument, then I'm attuned to it. Here's the problem with saying, and what preceded that clip, it was a little long, we didn't do the whole thing, but what preceded that is he's talking about Venezuela. Venezuela is having real problems right now, okay? And so,
Super crook.
right, no serious person, liberal or conservative, is arguing that America should become Venezuela. I'm certainly not doing that. But when people say you can't let America in any way adopt a socialist attitude, that's just incorrect. It's incorrect because we have a Veterans Administration that takes care of our veterans, which is socialism. We have Medicare, which takes care of our old people,
Social Security itself is,
which is socialism. If your house gets broken into, do you call the Socialist Police Department? I would assume you do. That's who we're going to call. If your house catches on fire, you're going to call the Socialist Fire Department to come put the fire out. And by the way, how did you get here today to the studio? You drove on the socialist roads. Those aren't private toll roads. So it's a rallying cry for a certain group of people because they hear that word and that word is stigmatized. But at the same time, I think you're really not understanding the actual lay of the land if you're like, boy, if you think about adopting one socialist idea, then you're going to lose all of your freedoms. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I hear you. But I mean, I think that anytime you start talking extremes of any situation, one or the other, they don't work, and it's just people just, again, it's an illusion.
Well,
I think that if you look at, America, we're a mixture of capitalistic ideas and some socialistic ideas too, that whenever we vet them in and go, okay, well, this makes sense that the government provides this service for you. And I guess just when people think about a socialist, I know I do, if you think about like Cuba, socialist regime, that means that the government takes care of everything. They have control over every aspect of your life. So that's...
And we don't want to become Cuba.
No, you don't want to be Cuba, obviously.
Fair enough. I get that. But again, talking about learning from history, like with the blackface thing, right? The reason that we have a lot of these social safety nets is because we used to not have any of them. And when the Great Depression hit, we had Hoover towns. I mean, we had people who went one day from being like honest, hard-working people to living in tent cities because there was no Social Security, there was no Medicare.
That's when they talk about government regulation. That's when basically this, Wall Street had no oversight.
Well, yes, exactly. And we ebb and flow on this. We go from having oversight on Wall Street to taking away oversight. We strip it away because it boosts the economy, because then those guys are unregulated and unfiltered to do whatever they want. In the short term, they will make money. That under Clinton, So, you want to hear me criticize a Democrat? Here you go. Under Bill Clinton, when Glass-Steagall was repealed, that was repealing regulations that were put in place after the Great Depression because we learned our lesson for a little bit at that time, but then enough time passed, enough people didn't pay attention to history, and they wanted to make some fast cash and boost the economy. They pulled back the regulations. Then fast forward to the waning days of the George W. Bush administration, and Wall Street's cratering. There has to be oversight on that stuff. And so it's kind of like, we can have the discussion, can you, like the VA was in bad shape here a few years, but yeah, definitely needed to be corrected. But was anybody actually arguing that the VA should just be done away with, that our veterans shouldn't be offered any health care? I don't think so. You're also not going to find an old person who wants to get rid of their Medicare. Now, if we're going to have a debate about whether or not Medicare type coverage should be available to everybody, that's a debate we're going to need to have. And if I want to suggest that be done, by God, I'm going to have to show you how we're going to pay for it. I mean, I'm in the wrong if I just come out and go, we'll figure it out. Don't worry, let's just do it. But at the same time, this idea that, because someone's bringing that up, they're going to just try to turn the country away from what it's always been. I think that's disingenuous as well, because we have examples right now of how we do that. We do it for old people, and we do it for veterans. Anybody think I'm off? What do you think? I mean, you're a conservative guy, Mikey, but do you think that things like Medicare and the VA should be done away with?
What I think
it's okay if you do. I mean, maybe you do.
No. I mean, it's like, do you think that our veterans should just die in the street? No, right. It's like,
but you're good with giving them government-funded health care, taxpayer health care.
Yeah, but and here's the thing: is like, I think what he's talking about. I think people my age and younger are wanting to say that they're socialists more, because I think that people are starting to divide. There's no the central, I think, is splitting off and dwindling down and coming to the left, and so I think. People, I know a lot of friends I want to be a socialist, but Venezuela is socialism.
Yes.
Like, the government took over means of production, and then, and that's what we don't want. And I
agree.
And I think the kind of bigger thing is obviously the benefits that government programs provide are helpful, and especially the VA and things like that. And Medicare is, I'm not, whatever, maybe because I'm young, but I think we can make cuts to that. But anyway. I think that's kind of what he's talking about, is that maybe people don't really understand when they say I want to be a socialist, I want America to be a socialist country, that they don't understand what it is, and that's what it kind of goes to. There needs to be checks and stuff like you're talking about, but I think that's kind of the thing that he's talking. Oh yeah, not what he's talking about, but that's what I get when I hear that is you need to pull back from the we want to be socialist part.
Yeah,
because you don't want the government taking over everything.
I would agree that if someone said to me, we should just become a socialist country,
I thought that was pretty funny.
Was that now? What?
When the teacher uses an anonymous example of what not to do, but everyone knows it's you.
Oh, yeah. But, if someone like you were talking about, someone you knew or something, said to me, we should just become a socialist country, I would vehemently argue against that. I would tell them all the reasons we shouldn't do that. But what you're seeing, what you just saw the president do right there, is rather than break down all the nuances of the way Mikey just laid it out, which is, we need oversight, we need regulation, we need to not go too far with this thing, when he says there are calls for the country to become a socialist.
He's hyping up.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's disingenuous as well. So
politics.
But again, that's my justification for staying. That's my call for staying involved. Because
I would just like to see things adjusted. I like how our government is now. I mean, and I travel the world, and I got to be honest with you. I haven't been somewhere where I've landed in a country, been there for a week, and go, fuck. I'm going to call up Mrs. Mir and see if the kids want to move here. I haven't found one yet where I'm I would prefer to stay here than stay in the U.S. The U.S. by far is my favorite place to be. Are there things I'd like to adjust about it? Yeah. For example, everybody talks about health care. I would like to see us pull away from welfare, make that highly regulated to where I do acknowledge there are times when there's a mother of 8 who fucking loses her job and needs some help. But I mean, also too, I know guys that are in their fucking 20s applying for fucking welfare that have, I've had a couple, I don't want to embarrass them, but where I'm looking at them going, are you fucking serious? So-and-so just fucking applied for it. There's nothing wrong with so-and-so. Fucking, you can apply for it. And I'm like, no shit. Fuck that. You know what I mean? Whereas like, all right, pull back from that, highly regulated to where like, only 10% of the people on it should be probably on it. The rest are fucked. Go get a job. Because everybody always talks about this. It's like, allow illegal immigration because, it gives us those jobs where people are making less than minimum wage. I'm like, actually, I know a bunch of people that can work those fucking jobs. All the people that are fucking applying for welfare, they need to stop thinking they're too good for those jobs and realize that that's what you've amounted to in life, and you need to work that job.
Well, and if you want to talk about a guilty on both sides issue, illegal immigration is a great one because, sure, from the left, there's going to be a lot of consideration given to let's say carrying the Hispanic vote, for example, right? That's something that the left would definitely not want to alienate. However, over on the right, they have not minded illegal immigration when it comes to being able to pay people substandard wages.
Because you're paying someone a substandard wage, and I realize that keeps my price down when I go to the grocery store to go buy fucking avocados.
Yeah.
But we have a workforce. You have a bunch of people on welfare that are able-bodied but can't find a job. But if all of a sudden you don't employ those illegal immigrants, and now you employ the actual U.S. citizen that has a tax ID number and pay him minimum wage to go do it, and he might not be happy about it, but that's what you've amounted to. I'm sorry, teach your kids to fucking stay in school or to do something with their life.
Well, there's a lot of different layers to it because, from them, obviously, we can't solve all the world's problems in one podcast, but from them, obviously, I would start talking about a living wage and things like that. There's a lot of different layers to it.
But if you drive up the wage too much, then you also drive up everybody else's costs, and that causes problems on itself.
Here's what we all
There
have.
are always going to have to be people that are poor.
Okay, I agree, but
you have to have poor people, and guess what? That's decided at a young age. Why do you think I invest so much into my children? Because I don't want my children to be a part of the poor crowd. So I'm heavily involved in my child's life. Whereas you see these other parents, and it isn't even about a means, but they don't give a fuck about their kid. They don't know who their friends are. They don't fucking know what they're doing after school. They don't push sports. They don't care about what they eat. And then all of a sudden the kid's 18. They don't even know who the fucking kid is. And they're like, well, my kid's a piece of shit too. I'm like, because you've made zero fucking emotional and intellectual investment into your child. I realize that you might not have the financial investment, but I know people that drop their kids off at fucking Meadows, that drive a car that it's like, holy fuck, this guy works 2 fucking jobs to make sure his kid goes to the school. And they're with him every fucking minute of the day. They're at wrestling practice watching them, there's an investment, what I mean? So if you don't, that's the cycle if you want to redeem. So I feel for that guy. I don't feel for the person who just is like, well, fuck, just give to me. I'm here, I deserve. I'm like, well, who the fuck says you deserve shit?
Yeah, no, that all fair points. But I think that, and I don't think there's any substitute for that kind of involvement. But what I think we all have to agree to as a baseline, if we actually want to get something like that done, is we do have to say, okay, rather than prioritize getting something for the absolute cheapest price possible, what we're going to agree to is that we're going to pay just enough for something that we're okay with the way that it was produced or harvested. So what I mean, for example, is like we don't allow kids to work in sweatshops anymore in this country.
Child labor.
We used to. We don't anymore. We as a society have drawn that standard. Now, if we want to repeal child labor laws, we can start making stuff even cheaper than we get it now. But hopefully, at least the people in this room would say, no, that's a bad idea. I'm going to pay a little more for what I'm wearing than I would otherwise if an imprisoned 7-year-old made it.
But it's so hard to do that nowadays because not that obviously, but that's why America ships all our jobs overseas because they don't have the same regulations we have.
Again, that's what I'm saying. But
my son wears all fucking Nike shit. If you're telling me that some 8-year-old made it overseas, like I don't fucking know when I bought it. I got to be honest with you. I'm not that vested in knowing. I don't sit there and grab my phone going, oh, fuck, this company here that you want to wear, that you saw this fucking, that Tom Brady's wearing this new jersey and you want to have the jersey. I just buy it for him.
Well, we're not going to catch it all. But what I'm saying is, as a general approach to being involved, and it doesn't just pertain to clothing. It pertains to where does your food come from? What kind of standard are we going to have? What kind of minimum standard are we going to have, for example, and this we'll get back to the healthcare debate. Because one thing about healthcare is we don't refuse service to people who are in critical need. I mean, you can walk into an emergency room, they're going to save your life whether you have insurance or not. We as a society have decided to do that. Now, if we want to make the practical decision that we're going to turn away the weak and just kind of write them off, that would actually be more cost effective. But we're not going to do that because we have all decided as a society that, again, we have that minimum standard. So given the fact that we're going to have these minimum standards, now we have to decide what the best way to pay for that is going to be. And I just want I long for everybody to be careful about getting wrapped up in the feeling of, yeah, you know, I work and they should. And even though I agree with that, I do agree with it, we also can't lose sight of the fact that, yeah, but as a society, we're not willing to take that to the extreme degree of so literally fuck them and I'm going to step over a dead body in the gutter. We don't do it. Right?
I better not talk because if I ever run for politics, they might put this on record.
Hey, and you might get elected. Listen,
hey, look,
all bets are off in terms of what will get somebody elected.
I guess the only analogy I can draw to go on how I think about things, if you have a pride of lions, and one of the lions is slow and weak and sickly, they're not going to go ahead and destroy and bring back the strongest lion to try to keep that weakest lion alive. They're not going to restrict, okay, you sit back, buddy, and maybe you don't eat as much so that our sickly one can eat more, because he attributes 0 to the fucking total mass of it. In fact, if a lion gets a kill, the strongest eat first, all the way down to the weakest, because for the whole pride to move forward, that's important. And I think that sometimes empathy can be a disease upon high intelligent creatures. So we sit there and we feel empathetic towards the weak and we allow them to go ahead and keep on surviving, and it brings back the totality of the tribe.
That's a soundbite that would have killed your political career, by the way. Empathy is a disease.
It can be, man.
Frank, really like, can I just put on the Klan outfit and you take a picture? Because at this point, that would be easier to deal with.
Some empathy is good, but I think when we're overly empathetic and we pull back on the strong and hamper them to pull up the weak, I'm sitting there going, okay, what's our total contribution to the society? Because if we're thinking like a socialist type mindset, well, it's okay, the greater good of everybody else. And I can point out to a certain point that bringing along the fucking back end runners is not helping out the total good of the society.
I'll meet you part way on that, because although I do believe that's why we are more evolved than lions, for example, or other, jungle dwelling creatures, I will say this: in a capitalist society, that strongest lion will always eat best. He will always have the means. So, for example, and I'm sure I've used this analogy before on the podcast, but there is a reason why when a new Walmart opens, Neiman Marcus doesn't get nervous. They don't care. Doesn't affect them in the least. Why? Because it's
different clientele.
Yeah, whole different clientele.
Demographic, as they would call it.
Yeah, and actually, in terms of healthcare, if we do talk about like a Medicare for all system, I am not somebody who would ever want to see privatization completely eradicated in an ideal situation. I would still see that, listen, if you've got the means to pay cash for your health care, go ahead and you pay whatever doctor you want to. But at that point, it's fixing the broken system, because you're not the problem that you're paying that cash. The problem is the uninsured people who are driving up the cost in emergency rooms. That's what's got to be fixed, because it's not like it's not a broken situation and we're just trying to fix something that's not broken. So with the lion analogy, I can say that top dog, top lion, whatever, for human analogy, what we're talking about in our capitalist society is always going to get the best of everything, because he's always going to have the means.
Right. And then I guess, and this goes back to what you say never works, but I guess the Reaganomics, the trickle-down effect, because I've seen it firsthand in the clubs. Whenever the economy was going well, and all our big fucking sharks and big whales would come into the club, all of us did better, because that guy now would buy, instead of maybe one bottle, he buys 10 fucking bottles for all his friends, and we're all making money off of that. And I guarantee that his landscaper is happy that he's making more money, because all of a sudden he comes home and goes, hey, this year I made an extra $2 million. You know what? Fuck it. I want a bigger pool. I want bigger this. And I noticed that as a service industry, Vegas, we do better when those guys out there are, it's like the lion. It's like, all right, the strong lion eats an elk. If I'm down on the chain, there's not as much meat left over. But if that fucking lion is so strong that he's pulling down elephants, he doesn't eat the whole fucking elephant. Now there's more meat for the rest of us to go ahead and pull from.
So in that strip club analogy, why doesn't it last?
Well, then when the recession hits, then all of a sudden those guys drop out.
But why does the recession come? And this is my point. This is the long game, because what happens is a lot of those. I just noticed it just
but it seems like it's always waves.
But
I don't know if
yes, but a lot of those whales that you're talking about are paper whales. They're coming in. They're doing that on credit. It's not a problem if that's cash that they've got in the bank. They can go do that all day. I'm not begrudging them for that. The problem is, and this is where we get with lifting the cap off of Wall Street, like repealing Glass-Steagall, the things we were talking about earlier, is when you lift that governor off of them, how many, the $30,000 millionaire, how many of those douchebags you see come along? And the problem is that they're misguided, but as long as they're somewhat governed, you don't have to worry about them as much as you do when it's the Wild West. And if all of a sudden they can take out every loan, they can short sell every stock, they can, the way that they will be like the proverbial Wolf of Wall Street, those are the guys that fuck us over. It's like, I always say to people, who do you think ruined more lives? Charles Manson or Ken Lay, the guy that ran Enron? Yeah. The answer is a no-brainer, Ken Lay. But you look at the two pictures side by side, and Ken Lay looks like generic white businessman grandpa. Yeah. How can he have ruined more lives than the crazed hippie serial killer? Well, all is not as it appears. That was a good one. Should we try? Is that a good one to end on?
Yeah, I think so.
We're not going to outdo that.
Yeah. I think from here it's all downhill.
That was some vintage phone booth fighting too. Yeah. We haven't
Q&A going back.
We haven't really riffed on a good topic like that. No. Everybody feel good? You feel good, Mikey?
Yeah.
That was a solid.
See, this is the political conversations I like to have.
Yeah.
Because right now none of us want to fight each other. Yeah. We're just like, oh, here's my thought, and then I sit there and go, oh fuck, your thought is valid too. You know what I mean? Like back and forth.
I don't
I love having those conversations with people where I can sit there and go. You know what I mean? You can think, because self-described, I'm very much more in the middle. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I could talk to people extreme right, and there's times I sit there and go, fuck, I really like that idea. Then I'll come back and talk to you about it, and you're like, well, no, bring it back over here. I'm like, oh, no, I like that idea too. Fuck.
I don't get why people steer away from these kinds of conversations, unless it's just that they don't have confidence in their own opinions to begin with.
Well, you know what it is? It's different in person. Most of these conversations happen online, and after about 1 point each, someone's calling somebody racist, homophobe, bigot, xenophobe, and that happens because you want to win. And and
I also go back to what I said earlier. Yeah. I think the problem is in our society is that we condemn people for switching ideas, which I think people should be applauded for it. Be like, oh, you grew as a person. That's my thought. I guess it's like a martial artist. If you sit there and go, hey man, you used to only throw this punch and now you're doing this, like, well, in this fight it didn't work for me, or it only worked this well and I've added to it. Like, you think about it, in that world where it's very much proven in reality, we applaud people that grow and develop and add to their game. But when it comes to politics, we like condemn guys like, well, I thought you were on this side of the fence, you're just a fence jumper. I'm like, you mean because I grew, maybe I developed, or maybe I reinforced an idea and it stayed the same. But either way, it's always constantly being hashed out.
Yeah, it always makes me feel good. Always has, even as a kid. But again, you talk about the importance of parental involvement. And I, bag on my dad and all that kind of stuff, and it's well-deserved. But outside of my dad, I had super supportive family structure, both from my mom and my grandparents. Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that they taught me very early on was to be involved. They didn't even they told me how to think. They just told me about the importance of voting and the process and being involved and all that sort of thing. I'm going to save it for the next episode, but don't let me forget, I've got a great hypothetical to hit you with.
All right.
I have a hypothetical that I've just been chomping at the bit to lay on you, because I think it's going to spawn some great conversation, not unlike what we just got into, so don't let me forget to do that. All right, Frank, tell them, speaking of not forgetting to do things, a big part of how we keep the show afloat these days is that Amazon banner on the front of phoneboothfighting.com. Tell them more about that.
One of the easiest ways to help out the show, if you click on phoneboothfighting.com, you'll see the Amazon banner. Click on that and it transports you to the Amazon page. You can do all your shopping there for your wants and needs. And at no extra cost to you, a small percentage will come back to here and help us out at the show.
Yep, we see you guys doing it. You bookmark it, and that's how you go to Amazon every time you do it, and we really appreciate it.
Still disappointed that we haven't seen anything crazy.
Yeah, I'll dig in. I'll see if I can... Don't worry, it does
Someone
not
just
say...
buy something just for fucking conversation.
It doesn't, just so you guys know, it doesn't say your name. It doesn't say who you are. You can just see the unusual items that are... I remember one time one of our listeners bought a Pittsburgh Steelers garden gnome. Yeah. And hey, we got a cut. Some guy redecorated it or did a whole like home theater setup. That was a big deal. We appreciate that. So there's that. Also, merch is available at a steep discount right now because we need to clear out some of our old inventory in the phoneboothfighting.com store. So check that out, and discounts on all our T-shirt styles and all that sort of thing. All right, last thing, Frank, tell them how to follow us on social media.
You can follow us at Facebook and Instagram at Phone Booth Fighting, Snapchat and Twitter at Phone Booth Fight.
That's it. For the great Frank Mir and for Porno Mikey doing a fantastic job producing, I'm Richard Hunter, and we will see you right back here for another episode of Phone Booth Fighting.